My name is Tom Clendon, and I'm in conversation today about the optional papers at the Strategic Professional. Now, there are 4, and you have to choose to do 2 of them. Now, luckily, I am joined by my colleague Erin Morton.
Hello.
And Ben Wilson.
Hi.
And together we're going to try and give you some independent, impartial, but direct advice as to which of those optional papers are best for you to choose. Now, there are 4. But before we look at the 4 in turn, I'm wondering what factors the students should be taking into account, how they should judge which papers to take. Ben, perhaps you could lead with something.
Sure. Well, some students don't actually have a choice, because depending on which country you're studying in, if you want to get your local articles, you want to become a chartered accountant in your home country, you have to have chosen certain modules. And that tends to be AAA and ATX. So some students don't have a choice. Or you may be working in a career where you must do, though, even if you want to get your local articles, you really need to have done certain papers to work in that career. And again, that's often AAA and ATX.
Mm-hmm. So if your employer is paying for your exams and paying for your tuition fees, your employer may actually dictate to you. But yeah, we're about choice, and we're about helping those people who've got a choice. What do you think about pass rates? Should students just look at the pass rates, Erin, and just choose the one with the highest pass rate?
Easiest one.
No, not necessarily, because also they need to look at how they've performed so far. And they need to look at what their journey's been like, what subjects they've felt most strongest in. If they have come through the whole ACCA journey and they've started from the beginning to the end up to this point, then they'll know whether they did really, really well in audit, for example, or if they did really well in performance management or financial management. And that might then give them a bit of a gauge of, oh, actually, I really like this subject, I performed really well, and maybe that's something I should choose as an option. So that needs to be considered also.
Yeah, and of course, if students are, if you're not really aware of what these papers are about, and we'll be talking about them in a minute, you can go and do independent research, can't they? They can go onto the ACCA website, they can look at the syllabus, they can look at an exam. It's very, very important that they make an informed decision.
Yeah. And building on what Erin said, part of that decision shouldn't be look at the pass rates for those 4 and pick the 2 that have the highest pass rate because I've got the best chance of passing those, because that is not how it works. Those pass rates are misleading. Right? They are all 4 of those exams are of equivalent difficulty to pass. But
the same academic level.
Oh, they're at the same level, right? And ACCA goes through an enormous amount of quality control and rigour to make sure that those 4 options papers are of equivalent difficulty. Where you have different pass rates, it reflects the different nature of the students who choose those optional papers.
Okay, all right. So let's go back to the beginning. There are 4 papers. Let's get it out of the way. Let's get it out of the way, because we know what he's going to say.
He's done really well. He hasn't mentioned it.
I haven't said it once.
I mean, we know it's coming, but
we know it's coming. So there are 4 exams, optional exams. Why would anybody want to choose to do AAA?
AAA. Well, it's a good question, because AAA often has the lowest pass rate. AAA and APM often have the lowest pass rate out of the options papers. So you could go, you'd be crazy to pick that one because it's harder. AAA builds on your knowledge of SBR. So if you've got good financial reporting knowledge, you're in a strong position as a starting position for AAA.
So as we discussed in another one of these In Conversation series, when we talked about the order in which you should do your exams, it's essential that if you're going to do the AAA exam, you first of all have already passed your SBR.
Yeah, well, certainly take an SBR and hopefully passed it as well.
Yeah,
right? You must have studied SBR as a minimum, and ideally you've passed it as well.
And if you're strong at SBR,
it will really help you for AAA.
Yeah,
right? Because about 15 marks in the AAA exam rely on your financial reporting knowledge.
They'll
be incorrectly accounting for something. Your job as the auditor is to work out explain why they're incorrectly financial reporting for something, and how would you test it.
And you can't do that unless you know
the rules.
SBR.
So it needs to be fresh as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So SBR, then AAA. So AAA there aren't many numbers. fact, hardly any marks for discussion, for calculations, very few. There's almost no marks for knowledge. So memorising the textbook gets you nowhere in AAA. The syllabus is really small for AAA.
The syllabus is small.
Tiny.
Okay.
Tiny. And most of it you've already studied in AA or in your previous auditing studies. So most students who do study AAA go, I've done most of this already. And it isn't advanced because we're learning more about audit risk.
So I'm getting into the weeds here.
Yeah.
But why is the pass rate so low?
Well, that's because of why it's an advanced paper, right? It's advanced auditing, not because you're learning about new auditing standards, as you would do in SBR, for example. The thing that makes it advanced is that you have to apply your auditing skills to harder situations, so more complicated situations. And that's what makes it different to the lower level paper, and that's why students struggle with it, because it's a written exam and there's very few marks for showing knowledge. All of the marks are for showing understanding. So if you're someone who likes to learn the textbook and then write out a list of things you've memorised, AAA is really challenging.
Well, I think if you're a sort of student who likes to memorise the textbook,
It's not for you.
ACCA is not for you.
Well,
No.
you
you
know,
can pass some of the earlier exams by doing that.
strategic professional is not
It's not
is
the
not
way. You're
gonna
gonna
work.
get found out.
Right. So this has been a little bit of an advert for
Well, it's not. It's
AAA.
not about why it's hard.
Well,
I've said why, but why
well-
it's great is if you've got the right techniques, it is actually very, very manageable to pass. But you need to have the right approach to the exam.
Okay. So getting the right approach is crucial.
Crucial for that. paper.
Critical.
Yeah,
Erin, you've heard Ben talk about
several times.
AAA. Could you talk us through perhaps one of the other optional papers?
Well, probably one that's a bit of an opposite to AAA is advanced tax, because while you're looking at the exam being quite difficult for AAA, the content being smaller, ATAX pretty much is the opposite, isn't it? You've got the most enormous syllabus and the most huge amount of information you've got to absorb, and actually the exam itself, there isn't so much content to review, so the specimens aren't quite as detailed as AAA, but the amount you've got to have in place and know is really, really important.
I mean, the syllabus is so big for ATX, it won't even fit in a book.
No.
If you buy the textbook,
binder will
it's
break.
2 books
Yes.
because it's so much.
Yeah, it's huge.
So it reminds me in a small way, there's a parallel there with SBR. You've got a regulatory base,
Yes.
you've got some numbers, and you're then, not only do you have to know the regulatory base, but you have to
You have to
apply
apply
it.
it as well, exactly.
I can see a certain sort of student who likes their lower level tax, who is prepared to put in the work, cover the ground, actually quite enjoying advanced tax.
And I think the pass rates reflect that as well. There are a lot of students that make that move. They do enjoy tax and therefore they do it. I did exactly the same. I did tax, loved tax, then did advanced tax, loved advanced tax. And I think there's quite a big movement doing that. So yes, it does suit quite a good
So the
percentage
step
of students.
from being tax to advanced tax, it's not that. Is it that you're learning about harder tax rules, or is it that the exam's different? What makes it advanced?
There's more to learn, isn't there? It goes bigger, it goes wider than what you learn at TX stage.
Okay.
So there is more complex issues that you have to cover, pensions.
Deferred
which-
And the
deferred
integration,
tax,
the,
the things
integrate,
that
the
scare
integration of
you.
taxes as well, isn't there?
And there is more chat around it, but it's an enormous syllabus full of quite technical stuff.
Lots,
but it's the
lots.
kind of thing I find students talk about it and go, actually, it looked hard, but once I started getting into it, it was all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
And that was interesting.
Yeah.
And actually, I would say, if you're, all things being even, if you're going to be an accountant working as an accountant in some sort of accounting capacity, you need to know about tax, right? That's what people would expect you to know about. You also need to know about auditing. This is what people will expect you to know
So a
about.
lot of-
Don't we get that though? Don't you get the
yeah.
conversation? Oh, can you help me with tax?
My
Yes,
tax,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
exactly.
Yes.
And for your own personal situation, like you want to know where you can
Yeah.
save tax, don't you?
So AAA and advanced tax we talked about, and I think ATAX is the Marmite, because some people will not want to entertain it at all, and some people will be drawn to it, and often people do those exams as a pair,
Yeah.
sequentially, one after the other.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, what about the other two? Who wants to go first?
So I'll take APM. So I've taught
APM is advanced
Advanced Performance
Management.
So just cards on the table. I specialise in AAA, but I've spent many years teaching both APM and AFM as well, and SBL, not ATX. Anyway, so APM is quite similar to advanced auditing AAA in that it's a very discursive exam. There are more marks for numbers, but then there are in AAA, but not many more. It's mainly a discussion exam. There is a bigger syllabus than AAA, so there is more to learn, and it does very much build on what was in performance management. So if you liked the performance management paper when you did it at the lower level of the qualification, if you found it interesting, if you enjoyed the subject, you will enjoy advanced performance management.
I mean, I think that's a refrain, isn't it? That if you like the skills exam that relates to the higher level optional paper, look at your past performance.
It's a good starting point.
It's a good start.
Because if you like it, you're more likely to work hard. And if you work hard, you're more likely to pass.
Yeah.
Right? But APM does really build on what's in PM. It is the thing that students will always say about APM, and I say as a tutor, is I know the subject really well. I've taught it for years. I look at one of the exam questions and I go, I'm actually not quite sure what that's asking.
It's making you think.
Well,
it's making you
is,
think.
but they're also like, I genuinely don't quite know what you want me to do here. And if I'm like that as someone who's been teaching it for 15 years, if you're someone who's been studying it for 3 months and then sitting the exam, then you will be feeling like that in APM. So you come out of that exam and you go, I might have scored 70% if I think I interpreted the questions correctly, or I may actually have scored 30% because I might have gone down the wrong track and I really don't know what the right track was. It's a cryptic exam, and I find that many students find that unsatisfying as a feature of that.
But a challenge.
Definitely
I think we
a
can
challenge.
conclude that Ben likes teaching challenging exams. doesn't he?
Challenging
Yeah,
chat.
challenging
chat.
exams.
That's
Doesn't
me.
pull any punches.
AFM isn't quite as bad as that, is it? But the actual syllabus is rock hard.
Yeah.
We've already said it's maths based.
Yeah.
There's a lot of technical areas like hedging that terrify the life out of people.
I mean, some of those
including
subjects
myself.
you look at it at first and you're like, whoa,
Yeah,
what is
lots
that?
and lots going on
Yeah.
there. However, the exam is fair. There's a mixture of discursive and numbers, so you can pick up marks, you can apply some stuff, you can
Spreadsheets,
put stuff
lots
in.
of
You've got your
spreadsheets.
Yeah, loads of big calculations.
So it is a little bit fairer in that sense, but you've got to get through the syllabus first.
Yeah.
So it is a contrast.
And it is very much, if you've done financial management, you've studied it, the lower level ACCA paper, the subjects that are in there come up again. So investment appraisal, MPV, right? But you'll be asked to do harder MPVs. Cost of capital, you'll be asked to do really complicated calculations.
Post-tax.
I mean,
Mogliani and Miller.
Yeah, Miller and Miller.
Is that right?
Mogliani and Miller. Yeah, M&M. Just stick with M&M.
I have a
Bring it
confession
back.
to make. I did this exam. I passed it
You remember the names?
with 50.
I got
50.
51.
With 50.
Perfect.
I got
No
51.
wasted effort.
And that's
Absolutely
a pass.
no wasted
That's a
effort.
pass. That's a pass.
Yeah.
But it's not something I did teach it on a master's course once, but that's another story.
So I love teaching it, right?
Yeah.
but it is hard. And you have some students who, for example, on cost of capital, around Modigliani and Miller type calculations, big complicated formulas, that in the exam, you do have to be able to do some calculations, but you also have to be able to discuss how that whole approach to cost of capital works. You have to really understand it.
Yes.
And what you find with a lot of students, particularly ones who aren't that strong at maths, is that they spend all of their time trying to work out how to do the calculation. I can't do this calculation, it's so difficult. I'll spend all of my study time on the calculation, and they don't get on to the understanding and discussion and analysis part. So when they get into the exam, they can actually only do about 30% of it, because that's what the numbers are for. Most of the exam is for chat, but a lot of students don't get to the chat because they don't.
I mean, all of these strategic professional exams have no choice.
No.
You know, you have to cover the syllabus, and they all contain applied knowledge.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to recap, and I'm going to say there is no absolutely right or wrong answer as to which exams you choose to do in order to qualify. I know that, you know, when I go to my dentist, I don't ask what electives he did in terms of his qualifications. I don't actually think employers and customers, generally speaking, care too much, unless you're in that particular industry of tax and audit, and then obviously you're drawn to those. Make an informed decision. And I hope that our independent advice here has been useful to you in making that decision. But go do the research, talk to your fellow students, talk to your lecturers. It's an important decision to make, because you're going to be living with that subject for 3, 4, 5 months. And we want you to pass that exam first time. Look, Ben and Erin and I are in conversation around a whole series of issues. And I thank you for joining us on this particular edition.